This is News Overnight.
You were watching a fiery explosion and fire late last night at an aluminum manufacturing plant in Kearney, New Jersey. That huge ball of fire ignited a blaze that burned 14 or 15 companies in an industrial complex just north of Newark. At least 2 are dead today, Tuesday, May 27th, 1986.
From NBC News, this is Today with Bryant Gumbel and Jane Pauley.
And hello, everybody. Dr. Gumbel has the day off. He'll be back with us tomorrow. With me, John Palmer, of course, and good morning, John.
Good morning, Jane. During this half hour of Today, we'll report on the PLO's money problems and what that means to the rest of the world. Also coming up, Share, and at 7:43, we'll begin a week-long look at how the American man has changed since the end of World War II. Okay.
Also, Michelle Phillips will be here, as well as Art Ulene, who's beginning a 2-part series on diets, which ones work, which ones don't. But first to the news desk and that big story out of New Jersey, Bob Jameson. Morning, Bob.
Thanks, Jane and John. Good morning. Firemen in New Jersey have finally brought a blaze under control that raged through the night at an industrial complex across the river from New York. The blaze destroyed one manufacturing plant and engulfed 14 or 15 others before it was brought under control. The fire began when an explosion ripped through a plant that manufactured aluminum ball bats. At least 2 people were killed. Kearney, New Jersey Fire Captain Frank Lynch said the explosion blew him out of his bed in his home several blocks from the plant. A huge ball of fire rose into the night sky, and authorities quickly evacuated 500 residents from nearby homes. The cause of the fire, brought under control after 4 hours, is not known. Violence flared again in South Africa during the night. 3 blacks died and security forces fired weapons during rioting in black townships. But Crossroads, a shanty town where pro and anti-government blacks have battled, was quiet. A court, meanwhile, ordered South African police and the black vigilantes they are accused of arming not to attack squatters near Crossroads. But as Mike Betcher reports, for many, the order was too late.
Police bulldozers moved early this morning in the burned-out sections of Crossroads where defiant squatters are determined to resettle the piece of land they were evicted from during a week-long battle between warring black factions. Refugees from the burned-out sections of the Crossroads squatter camp are still haunted by the calamity they survived.
I seen it fight and fire.
5 days of fire and fight killed nearly 40 people, destroyed 3,000 shacks, and left at least 30,000 people homeless. The winners of the black-on-black war for power in Crossroads were a conservative faction who are seen as supportive of South Africa's white government. The losers, supporters of a more radical faction who oppose apartheid, called Comrades, have been ordered by the police to move to a new camp. The Comrades say they will fight to remain.
I want to stay and see what's going on. That's all. Till I must get my own place because I want my own place to stay.
Thousands of others have given up and moved to a new resettlement camp. They brought the few broken and burned pieces of furniture they could retrieve from their old shacks. They despair about their future.
Sometime I can see tomorrow.
The future down the road at Crossroads will likely bring another battle for a sandy piece of land. Mike Betcher, NBC News, South Africa.
Syrian and Libyan envoys have scheduled talks with Soviet officials today amid signs Moscow will now become involved in efforts to free Western hostages held in Lebanon. Syrian President Assad, meanwhile, is in Greece on his first visit to a Western country in 8 years. Assad is scheduled to discuss the hostage issue in Greece, but has so far spent most of his time denying that Syria is involved in state-sponsored terrorism. In Israel, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher said this morning that Palestinians, but not the PLO, should be involved in peace talks with Israel. Thatcher ended a 4-day visit to Israel this morning. Martin Fletcher reports.
The British Prime Minister leaves Jerusalem after charming her Israeli hosts, but all set for a major row with the PLO. In a press conference this morning, Thatcher's tough stand against terrorism led her to call on the Palestinians to find an alternative leader to the PLO unless it gives up terrorism and recognizes Israel's right to exist.
We have to find other Palestinian representatives who truly represent the Palestinian people. That, I think, is absolutely vital because there's no point in negotiating with people who don't represent the Palestinian people.
The statement came despite Thatcher's meeting last night with Palestinian leaders from the occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip. Their message was simple.
We told her that she has to respect our determination that we have chosen as our leadership of this.
Thatcher has now moved Britain away from the traditional European line that the PLO must have a role in the Mideast peace process. It's good news for the Israelis, who always insisted they'd never speak to the PLO. They now hope Thatcher can use her good contacts with moderate Arab leaders to revive the peace process, but they're not holding their breath. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
The death toll from the Soviet nuclear accident has risen again as the panel set up by Mikhail Gorbachev to investigate the disaster completed the first phase of its work. But as Steve Hurst reports from Moscow, the Kremlin's immediate concern is relocating almost 100,000 Soviets whose homes are no longer safe.
The Chernobyl disaster is a month old. 19 people have died. The Soviets now say human error definitely caused history's worst civilian nuclear accident. The worst of the radioactive fallout is over. The cleanup operation well underway. But an 18-mile zone around the crippled reactor, which sits in the breadbasket of the Soviet Ukraine, remains far too contaminated for habitation by people or farm animals. 92,000 residents were evacuated from that region, along with untold herds of livestock. Living quarters are in critically short supply in the Soviet Union, and housing the displaced families will become a major problem, especially as winter draws nearer. Right now, most of the children are in young pioneer camps for the summer, but when school reopens, the situation will grow even more critical. Soviet specialists continue careful checks of the region around the crippled reactor and claim all is safe outside the 18-mile exclusion zone. But in Moscow, the U.S. Embassy doctor has warned pregnant women and young children in the American community not to drink the local milk, citing elevated but not dangerous levels of radiation. Steve Hurst, NBC News, Moscow.
After studying 100,000 gifted junior high school students for 15 years, an Iowa State University psychologist concluded that boys are better than girls at math and that she knows why. Dr. Camilla Benbow says boys are better than girls because of male hormones. She said her study had discounted environmental reasons for the boys' better math performance, which got even better as the students got older. Dr. Benbow, in a bit of understatement, said her finding of superior hormones among the males might be unpopular and controversial. It's 7:07. Jane?
I think it might be controversial with little boys and the grown-up men who aren't good at math. Does it imply that one is not manly if one does not have enough testosterone to make one good at math?
Oh, I got enough testosterone. Huh? I got a courtly fix.
Yeah.
But no, I was
to see you home.
You son of a gun.
You had me in tears. I've been sniffling and blowing my nose.
I think it's the pollen in the air. Everybody's got a little bit in it, you know.
Yeah, I got more than a little bit.
I'm not quite sure what it is. As I say, the pollen count in some parts of the country was as high as 275 last week. But now it's, I think it's calmed down a little. It must be grass pollen in the air.
Well, whatever it is, it's good to see you.
But see, thank you. Same here. And one thing on the ship, notice there was no problem on the ship. You slept well, I'll bet.
Right, I think the company should send us away for our health.
Or buy a boat, stick it here in the middle of Central Park. Speaking of ships, the Queen Mary. Happy birthday, 50 years old today. What do they have here? A little PR release. A DC-3 will shower the Queen Mary with 1,000 pounds of white carnations today at Long Beach, California.
Still a beauty. I've seen her there.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah. The one we were on, the Norway, I think is bigger, though, right? But I guarantee you, I'd make the women proud. I would make the women proud with that math score, because that was the one thing that really almost did me in. Well, we got good rains down south, and that's always good news after the drought we have. I guess a lot of it has to do with the dry weather while we're all sneezing and sniffling. But the fact is, look out from Chattanooga all the way down to Shreveport, Louisiana. Heavy downpours expected today, possibly 2 to 4 inches of rain on the weather map. I don't know if you've noticed enough. Look at that beautiful new jet stream, a tricolor jet stream. Little warm weather all the way back up into Butte, Montana. As a matter of fact, temperature's going to be up to 95 in Boise in Idaho today. And how do you like our new map? Bob Bader outdid himself. He fell off the ladder twice and had a nosebleed from high altitude and hazardous duty pay. But we have a beautiful new map, and I hope it shows up as well as it does in the studio. Our pick city today is Bangor, Maine. It's going to be a gorgeous day up there. Temperature about 70 degrees. Mild temperatures throughout the northeastern states. Still raining in Indianapolis. It don't rain in Indianapolis in the summertime. Well, we shoot that theory down. The race has been scheduled for next week. You know that. Some fog here in the middle Mississippi Valley, and some scattered showers off and on again throughout the Mississippi Valley all the way down to where it could be heavy and severe in Louisiana, Mississippi, back down through eastern Texas. Be on the lookout.
PLO has been touted as the wealthiest revolutionary organization in the world. It has been said to control a $5 billion empire. The interest on the investment goes to support its fighting men and a variety of social services for displaced Palestinians around the world. Well, now the current issue of Forbes magazine disputes this claim. Steve Lawrence is the senior editor. He's here to show us why the PLO, in his opinion, is now going broke. To begin with, other sources say $5 billion. You say $1 billion. How does anybody know what the PLO is worth?
Well, I think no one knows for sure, but we had access to a whole series of documents that no one had really ever seen before. When the Israelis pushed Yasser Arafat out of Lebanon, in 1982, they left behind a lot of stuff that we managed to get our hands on.
The bank book, the investment portfolio.
Yeah, and we also approached the PLO as a business and as a corporation, which I don't think anyone really had done before. It was a lot of listening to rumors here and there.
Well, let's look at the balance sheet you've put together. We have a graphic to illustrate. The bottom line total, you find $154 million income. Where's it come from?
Well, it comes from a $1 billion portfolio of investments, which is treasury notes and kind of conservative things that maybe you and I would even invest in. The Saudis come up with $29 million. We had to mark that contribution down at the last moment. We found that they were giving a lot less than we thought they were.
But only the Saudis? What about Kuwait,
right.
Libya, Syria?
Well, so much for Arab solidarity. There was an agreement a couple of years ago for everyone to contribute. And for various reasons, the various Arab countries have found that they didn't really have to.
Contributions, what does that mean?
Well, contributions is charity. Charity solicitations, going to Palestinians around the world and asking them to fork up.
And taxes. Who's collecting taxes for the PLO?
The Kuwaitis are collecting a head tax. A lot of the countries agreed to collect a head tax on Palestinians who are living in their territory. But as you can imagine, things are pretty ragged out there.
This can't be the whole picture, though, because there are a number of affiliated military organizations with the PLO who are getting income from independent sources that aren't reflected in your
Sure, that's absolutely true. Unfortunately, it takes a lot less to support a small military organization that's just doing bombings, a small terrorist group, than it does to support the kind of enterprise that the PLO is engaged in.
Well, let's move along then and look at the outflow, PLO expenses. It's going to look like a welfare state, not a military organization.
It does begin to look a little bit like that. I mean, there is considerable military expenses, and this $100 million probably doesn't account for the actual cost of the hardware. The PLO picks that up, captures it, gets it from the Russians, a variety of places. This is mainly support of men in the field. But the subsidies, for example, the PLO pays legal defense for its terrorists accused in civil and criminal courts. It maintains representative offices around the world in 100 different countries. It pays widows and orphans survivors benefits for its men killed in action. And it has a variety of health services. Then there's administrative, which is the bureaucracy that's set up to handle all this. It is a surprisingly broad...
Bottom line there, $310 million going out every year, 154 coming in, leads us to your conclusion that the PLO is going broke.
Sure, it means they're drawing down on their $1 billion.
Now, you come to another conclusion that some people are going to find mystifying, that we cannot afford to see the PLO go broke?
Well, I think that may be true. Washington seems to think that the PLO is a moderating influence. The PLO, after all, whatever you think of it, is the only organization worldwide that actually speaks for the Palestinians. I mean, you have a bombing group here and a terrorist group there, but they are the ones that speak for the Palestinians, and assuming we want to keep talking to them, that organization is valuable in place.
And you are assuming we want to keep talking to them?
I am assuming it. I am assuming it. When Arafat was pushed out of Lebanon, for example, we discovered that the U.S. secretly paid part of the bill for that evacuation. We had the British charter some ships, and then we paid the British secretly.
And yet you must have noticed how the Congress is reacting to President Reagan's desire to sell arms to our moderate friends, the Saudis.
Indeed. Indeed. I think it's quite a mix in the Middle East, and I think that as long as we can keep talking to someone, I think that we do think that that's valuable.
All right. Only $1 billion a year. And that's what they're worth. Well, we'll see. Thank you for being with us 21 after the hour. This is Today on NBC.
Is Willard often late to these sessions that you hold every so often?
Yeah, he likes to make an entrance, I believe. He likes to run in at the last moment. Do you remember yesterday when we were talking about the News Nook?
Yes, and literally took apart my new News Nook.
How they took, 2 feet?
Mm-hmm. Where did it go, do you think?
Well, I think I found out this morning
I think so.
Did you notice Willard's new weather map? Huh? Is he a big man or what? He looked great in front of it, but it is huge. It is. Give me some dimensions. What are the dimensions?
Now the state of Texas is about the size of Willard's stomach.
You know, as a matter of fact, maybe Willard's here. Who knows? This map that Willard got is so big, he may be there even as we speak. We just Willard.
Mark, could you walk on and demonstrate? You always you need people in these things to show the proportion of the size. Mark. Otherwise, people would think it's the size of a postage stamp, maybe.
And there's Mark. Mark is 6'5", and look at that. You know, can barely touch Indianapolis. Right. Woo!
Can you go for Bangor? No. That's our pick city of the day. 70 degrees, mild.
Did you see when, you know, Willard was standing there, and he I forget where he was pointing, but he had his whole arm out, you know, pointing to, you know, up there it's going to be hot and in the 90s, showers, precipitation, partly cloudy, and so forth. And I thought, that man needs a pool cue. This map is so big.
Since Willard has been here, this map, here he comes.
Here comes the big man
This map
himself.
gets progressively bigger. We've been taking your map apart there, Willard. It's a lovely map, but
I heard you.
Yesterday we were talking about that I'd lost part of the news nook. About 2 feet of the news nook is gone, and I see where it's gone. It's going right over there.
I love it. I want to say, I love America, June. Don't you think the lighting and everything on this is pretty, it's such a beautiful map.
Stand back against the board.
Except that you just disappeared in darkness. Stand very close.
What, is that where the light's all screwed up?
You have to put your back really
I got to stand right up against it.
Right.
Do you know this man? 6'6", 195
Now, was the idea to make you look more sleek?
Smaller? I'll be honest with you, this is a 6-year fight for me, and I gave up on it a year ago, and I guess when they found out that they thought I didn't care anymore, then they put the map up. They've upgraded the map. I wanted a big map for years, and I'll tell you why, because people at home, this is serious, folks, people at home, no matter what fooling around we do or horsing around with the weather, if you have a map big enough, as you sit home, you can read everything that's on that map and ignore anything that I say. And I think that makes a big difference.
That's true. That's true. Your eyes go where you're interested.
And see what they've done with the states. They've outlined. This is a composite of a lot of letters from a lot of people. The only thing they haven't done that before I die or get thrown off. Yes.
Canada. Absolutely.
Canada. Yeah. I think we should have Canada, at least the big Canadian. He just took a gun to his head.
See, he wants more. He's an empire
He says either the pistol or the bottle, right?
Give him a better map. He wants the world. Yeah.
Well, see, with Canada.
Then you'll want Australia.
Today, Canada, tomorrow, the world.
I think maybe the
Bahamas. Then you'll want the entire armed service network.
Do you want to know something? A pioneer in television weather, which shows you how sick the TV business is. It took me 2 years to get Hawaii and Alaska on this map. And then after that, the other networks followed. This is a trend-setting weather program. Most people don't realize. They just think it's all flotsam and
But you get lots of mail, you know, from around the world, since we are Armed Forces Network.
Yeah, but I'm talking about every day.
But Frankfurt, I mean, won't people be interested in what the weather
Yeah,
was,
but we'd be in retrospect. That's 8 hours old. If we gave the weather for Frankfurt, we'd be either giving it for the next day or
well, you know, the program is carried, live in Australia.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but see, that doesn't count. What counts is if you're giving the weather for Canada, people are having weather, the same weather at the time we're giving it.
What you can say about Australia, though, is that, you know, on a daily basis, it's dark.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 9 times out of 10, dark. There's no two ways. And that may give me some credibility, because that may be the only thing I'm right about. I never missed a sunrise or sunset.
Well, the weather board, we were discussing it when we first came in this morning. It is awesome, Willard. That's the only word.
Do you like it, though?
Yes.
How about if you nailed me up
covering 8 western
like
states instead of 2.
Time for station break.
I could just sort of...
And we're back at 7:30. I'm Jane Pauley with John Palmer and Willard Scott. Well, Brant Gumbel has a day off getting an honorary doctorate, which is why I said Dr. Gumbel would be back with us tomorrow, and he will, unless he's too big for it.
Dr. Mumble.
In this half hour, we'll be joined by Michelle Phillips, who I suppose should have been here yesterday being Monday. She, late of the Mamas and the Papas, 19 years defunct now. She has a new book about those days called California Dreamin'.
And as we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, in this half hour, we'll begin a week-long series on the changing face, the changing role of the American male. How is he different now than he was, say, 40 years ago? Today, we'll be joined by the editor of Esquire.
And Gloria Steinem sits down with a candid interview with Cher, the first of a 2-part chat about everything under the sun. We'll be seeing more of that kind of interview from Gloria Steinem. But first to the news desk, and here's Bob Jameson.
Jane, an explosion set off a spectacular fire in a New Jersey industrial complex a few miles from New York City during the night, and at least 2 people were killed. 500 people were evacuated from nearby apartment buildings, but they were allowed to return after the fire was brought under control. The explosion was in a plant of the Airlight Aluminum Corporation in Kearney, New Jersey. The company makes aluminum baseball bats, and some of them exploded while the fire was burning. Flames spread to other buildings in the complex. The cause of the original explosion isn't known yet, but one fire official said it may have taken place in the Airlight boiler room. In Moscow, officials say the death toll in the Chernobyl nuclear accident has risen to 19. They say it will take months to determine exactly what caused the accident. In Bangladesh, grieving relatives of the victims of a ferry accident crowded the banks of the Mena River today, seeking news of their loved ones. A double-deck ferry with 1,000 people capsized Monday. 80 bodies have been recovered, and one estimate is that 500 people are missing. South African police say 3 persons were killed in continuing unrest in black townships during the night. All the victims were black. In the Crossroads shanty town near Cape Town, at least 40 people have died in the last 5 days. Fires have destroyed 3,000 shacks. There was fighting here between black militants and a more conservative faction considered more supportive of South Africa's all-white government. In Beirut, sporadic firing and sniper fire persisted this morning in the vicinity of a refugee camp. This less than 24 hours after 4 people were killed and more than 40 hurt in fighting between Shiite Muslim militiamen and Palestinian guerrillas. There's a continuing diplomatic flap this morning at Checkpoint Charlie and other boarding crossing points between East and West Berlin. East German guards are demanding that British, French, and American diplomats show their passports when crossing the checkpoints. The diplomats are refusing on the ground that agreements signed after World War II give them the right to travel freely. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher of Britain wound up her visit to Israel today with a call to the Palestinian people to find new, more moderate leadership. She said the PLO doesn't really represent moderate Palestinians. This was a departure from the traditional British and European view that the PLO must have a role in the Middle East peace process. And in a fashionable neighborhood in New York City, 87-year-old Mrs. Vera Tucker was taking a holiday stroll near her home when a thief on a bicycle grabbed her purse and began to pedal away. Mrs. Tucker gave chase, hit the man with her umbrella, and knocked him off the bicycle. A passerby grabbed the man or rescued him from Mrs. Tucker, and this morning he faces charges of robbery, resisting arrest, and possession of stolen property. Who says it's safe out there, Jane?
And thank you for not reporting that poor Mrs. Tucker was arrested for assault. Well, Willard Scott has the weather in a moment, and then we'll meet an original mama, Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas, after these messages. You know, we let it go by without mentioning anything in the other half hour when you debuted your new weather map, a weather map that is so big it should have been christened with a bottle of champagne.
Well, we had that from the, you know.
Yeah. Did you notice how big this was? Somebody said that it's so big it should have a sign posted, no handball playing.
It looks like a bocce court, doesn't it? It really does.
The man is taking over the entire program.
You could actually run a Harley Davidson through that thing, you know. Maybe we'll do that for a grand finale. Your hometown is getting wet, little Indianapolis. Can you believe that?
I've been to a race where you sat in the stands and traded rumors of sunshine and Terre Haute, but
this is the third
it didn't
time.
happen.
Third time in the history of the race. This is a nice thing. They're having the symphony. The race has been scheduled till Saturday. I guess you all know that by now. But this is up for the Boulder Symphony Orchestra. Let me make sure I have that right. Colorado Springs Symphony Orchestra. And they're having a run for the roses. That takes place this weekend. This is quite a run. They're going to get all dressed up in original costumes. And, you know, the old bit where they run a couple of miles and whoever wins.
The Snugglebum family from Play School.
Orange Smarties.
Season officially gets underway June the 1st, and they tell me that's coming up. See the weather map in the east? It is beautiful rain. Couldn't ask for a nicer gift. It has been so dry. These showers have pretty much lingered throughout the Ohio Valley and the Tennessee Valley for the last couple of days, but they're slowly moving towards the east. They'll be getting some rain. In fact, this morning, western North Carolina, Virginia, and the southeast will get some more shower activity. It is beautiful. Our pick cities, Bangor, Maine today. The New England, the Northeast is gorgeous. Florida is sensational and hot and sunny. Texas has severe thunderstorms, as we pointed out, all the way up through into parts of Mississippi and Louisiana. A little cooler air moving down into the western panhandle of Texas. Look at the hot temperatures. The northern plain states, the upper plain states, and the upper or northern Rockies. 90s all the way up into Boise. into Boise, Idaho, and into Billings, Montana. 66 along the coast there at Seattle, and mostly sunny skies just ahead of this front, but behind it some scattered showers and maybe no snowflakes, but just plain old fog conditions in the Cascades. Sunny and hot in the southwest. Hawaii, sensational. Few scattered showers in Alaska. Here's what's happening in your world this morning.
Sydney mostly sunny and 22, Brisbane mostly fine 24, 16 in Melbourne and mostly fine, and Adelaide showers and 17.
2 happy birthdays, 100 Bessie Rusley of Minot, North Dakota's 100, and James Hanson of Freeport, Texas, outside of Galveston or outside of Houston, is 100 years old today, and for his birthday he wants a new power lawnmower. 7:38 is the time. What does that tell you? Here's Jane and a beautiful lady.
Thank you. And when people think of the 60s, they always hear music. Well, like this. Yes, the Mamas and the Papas, signature sound for the laid-back generation. While their career was blooming, their lives weren't. Mama Michelle Phillips has chronicled their career in her new book, California Dreamin'. Good morning.
Good morning.
I asked you when you sat down, from the first hit, California Dreamin', to the last, how long?
3 years.
3 years?
An amazing 3 years.
You then had to have lived a very fast life to have made the impression you did in just 3 short years.
It was just a lot of recording, just a lot of work.
Well, a lot of
jammed
other
into
stuff.
That period.
A lot of other stuff too, which is why both you and your ex-husband John Phillips can write books about the story. Is it a coincidence that the two of you have written books that come out virtually simultaneously?
Well, I had agreed with John and Denny to write the book, and in the middle of it, I found out that he had made another deal, so I was a little upset about it at first, but really, I think they kind of complement each other.
In what way?
Well, I can talk about the sex, and he can talk about the drugs.
Real? Okay. Well, let's talk about his drugs then. What did you leave out of your, what did you leave out of your book?
Well, nothing. Actually, my book ends at the end of the Mamas and the Papas, and his drug problem started after that. So I didn't feel any need to get into that because I wasn't writing about that. That wasn't part of my story.
So what's the story about the sex?
Oh, you know, that's endless. That's just your life.
What do you mean?
Well, no, I just don't like to get into John's drug problems because it's not really a part of my book.
Well, let's maybe leave the personal behind and talk about the general. What was it about the era that your group, after 3 years, and others and other individuals, self-destructed?
I don't know how that happens, but some people do self-destruct. I guess I was in the middle of it as much as anybody else was, but if you have a reason, you know, to continue your career or to, I just wasn't, that just wasn't my life. I have children and I have a career and I had other things that were very, very important to me in my life.
But what about that overlay of peace and love and harmony? Was that
I'm still a hippie.
You are?
I'm still a hippie at heart. I don't buy war toys for my children or anybody else's. I am a peacenik, and I would support that. And I don't feel like I lost that part of me when the 60s ended. It's part of my life, and it's part of my personality.
How are you as a mother? You have a daughter who's virtually grown now.
She's China Phillips is 18, and I have a 4-year-old son, Austin.
How did you raise her? Did she know everything in the book before you wrote it, or did you protect her from the truth?
No, the book is lying around the house, and so is her father's, and she's chosen not to read either one of them until things cool down a bit. I think she feels that there might be things in the book that will upset her.
Might she be right?
Not in my book, but there will be things in her father's book that will be upsetting to her.
Yeah.
But I think that when she finally does read them, that she'll really appreciate the era and you know, the people her parents were.
You made the comment, actually, a couple years ago, but I think it's worth going back to. You said that you were still very rich, very thin, and very popular. As one of our guys said as you walked in, she's spectacular looking. Very true. Very rich. Did you mind your money well?
I managed to mind it pretty well, and amazingly, after 19 years, royalties are actually bigger today than they were 15 years ago. There's been an enormous resurgence of interest in 60s music, and all you have to do is ask MCA Records, you know, like, and we checked out in sales the other day. Monday had sold 60,000 copies in Tokyo alone last year. I mean, in Tokyo. I don't know who goes out and buys it, but while we're on the subject, this is the record you listen to while you're reading the book. I mean, I want you to have the full experience.
Okay,
and this is the new Mamas and
what do you
Papas
get
Hits
off that?
album.
A nickel, a dime, a quarter, or what? What's your
Well, I have a
percentage?
little private deal. No, I have no idea what my royalties are on something
Easy
like that.
come, easy go. Michelle Phillips, thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a moment after a message. From time to time, today we'll be visited by Gloria Steinem, the editor of Ms. Magazine, who will bring us an interview with one of the many people she's covered and come to know over the years. An interview from a different perspective this morning. Cher at 40. And good morning, Gloria.
Good morning. When I first met Cher, she was a 21-year-old street kid. She was a high school dropout. In the house she shared with Sonny, she was sitting on the bed surrounded with stuffed animals, reading love comics. Since then, she's changed drastically, but she always stays herself. This was Cher 20 years ago, married to Sonny and on top of the charts.